She thought it was just another luxury project, until the day she realized she was no longer designing his mansion, she was designing a future she was never supposed to be part of. Isabella Laurent had built a reputation in New York as the architect who could turn glass and steel into emotion. Her designs were bold, intelligent, and impossible to ignore, just like her. At 32, she owned her own firm, had been featured in elite design magazines, and had turned down more wealthy clients than most architects would ever meet. She believed in structure, in balance, in clean lines and controlled spaces, because unlike buildings, hearts were unpredictable, and she had learned long ago that love was the most unstable foundation of all. When the email came from the office of Alexander Vail, she almost deleted it without reading further. Alexander Vail was not just another businessman, he was the billionaire behind Vail International, a real estate empire that quietly owned half of Manhattan's skyline. He was known for his ruthless negotiations, private lifestyle, and an icy composure that made even seasoned investors nervous. He wanted a private cliffside mansion overlooking the Atlantic, something modern, timeless, and impossible to replicate. The budget was unlimited, the timeline aggressive, the confidentiality absolute. Isabella told herself it was just business, just another project, just another powerful man who thought money could control outcomes. She accepted the meeting. The first time she walked into his penthouse office, she felt the shift in atmosphere immediately. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a kingdom beneath him. He stood near the glass, tall, composed, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked tailored to intimidation. When he turned toward her, his expression was unreadable, calculating, almost bored, yet his eyes lingered a second too long. "Miss Laurent," he said, his voice smooth, controlled, "thank you for accepting my proposal." She corrected him gently. "I accepted a meeting, not the proposal." A flicker of amusement passed through his gaze. "Good," he replied. "I prefer architects who challenge me." Their conversation was sharp, efficient, charged with a subtle tension neither acknowledged. He wanted minimalism with dominance. She insisted on warmth with intention. He questioned her use of natural materials. She questioned his obsession with height and isolation. For the first time in years, Alexander Vail looked at someone who did not seem impressed by his wealth or power. And for the first time in years, Isabella found herself studying a client, not as a contract, but as a mystery. By the end of the meeting, the project was hers. The property site visit was scheduled for the following week. The cliffside estate was breathtaking, raw, untouched, wind crashing against jagged rocks below, as if the ocean itself refused to be controlled. Isabella stood at the edge, imagining glass walls reflecting sunrise, open spaces blending with horizon. Alexander watched her instead of the view. "You see it already, don't you?" he asked. "I always see it before it exists," she answered softly. And in that moment, he saw something too, not just an architect, but a woman entirely focused, alive when creating, fearless when standing at the edge of something vast. Over the following weeks, their meetings became frequent, design drafts, material discussions, structural debates. But beneath the professional language, something else began to form. It was in the way he leaned closer when she explained a concept, in the way her voice softened slightly when he surprised her with thoughtful input, in the way silence between them no longer felt empty. Rumors in the industry warned that Alexander Vail did not mix business with personal attachments. He valued control above all else. Isabella had her own rule: never get emotionally involved with a client, especially when powerful enough to complicate everything. Yet late nights reviewing blueprints in his private office turned into shared glasses of wine. Conversations shifted from architecture to childhood ambitions to fears neither had spoken aloud before. He told her about growing up with nothing, watching his father lose everything, trusting no one but himself. She admitted she poured herself into buildings because they were easier to fix than broken relationships. The tension was subtle but undeniable, like a hairline crack beneath polished marble. One evening, as rain pressed against the glass walls of his penthouse, the power flickered briefly, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Backup lights glowed low, casting shadows across his face. "You're afraid of something," he said quietly, stepping closer. "I'm not afraid," she replied, though her heartbeat betrayed her. You design structures meant to last forever, he continued, but you never design space for yourself. She swallowed, aware of how little distance remained between them. This is exactly why I don't cross professional lines, she whispered. And what line is that? He asked, his voice lower now. The one where I forget you're my client. The air changed. The city lights blurred behind them. For a second, neither moved. He lifted his hands slowly, almost giving her time to step away, but she didn't. His fingers brushed hers, not forceful, not demanding, just enough to ask a question without words. And that was the moment everything shifted. Not dramatically, not recklessly, but inevitably. Because the most dangerous romances do not explode. They unfold quietly, disguised as late meetings, shared glances, and excuses that sound logical at the time. When she finally pulled her hand back, the spell did not break. It only deepened. This cannot happen, she said, more to herself than to him. Alexander steadied her, as if calculating risk versus reward. I never intended for it to, he replied, but intention rarely controls outcome. That night, she left his penthouse with rain soaking through her coat and confusion echoing louder than thunder. She reminded herself of the rules, of reputation, of consequences, yet when her phone lit up with a single message from him, I trust you more than anyone in this city, her resolution weakened. Because trust is far more intimate than attraction, and without realizing it, Isabella Laurent had stepped into a design far more complex than any mansion blueprint. She had entered a structure built from power, vulnerability, desire, and unspoken need, and foundations like that either create masterpieces or collapse spectacularly. She just didn't know yet which one they were building.